Hey, what's going on to YouTube? This is SEO0320 representing JVS. So I'm back here again for another review. This is a review for probably, to me, my most anticipated movie this year, aside from Ready Player One, Infinity War, definitely Deadpool, Aquaman, but this is the one that I've been legitimately waiting for ever since we went to San Diego Comic-Con last year, saw the footage of the new trailer and then the first clip of something that happened within the confines of the movie, and I was like, man, this looks great. I've loved what Ryan Coogler has done thus far. I still need to see Fruitvale Station myself, but I did watch Creed 2, when I actually did a review for it. Like, it made me get outside of my comfort zone, start doing 4K for the very first time. I was inspired, I was like thrilled, and I just want to tell you guys, as far as Black Panther, to me, it was very much so encouraging, because I went into it, I've seen it twice now, went into it thinking, you know, there's a lot of hype behind this. Like, everybody's saying Michael B. Jordan's this, a lot of people are saying like Dormology was really great, a lot of people saying that Chadwick Boseman doing great, but it's like, what is it really going to mean to me? How's it going to resonate with me in terms of a reviewer, as a critic, and as a fan, you know, not just black culture, but what they're going to do with this moving forward. And I gotta say, I was very impressed with Black Panther. It definitely exceeded the expectations that I actually had for it, because I tempered it going into it. That's not to say it is the very best Marvel movie, but it is within my top 3 of all the MCU movies to date. So let's go ahead and break down why. So from the very opening, the movie, I felt like it didn't feel like an MCU film. It actually was designed kind of very much so like, I guess, Guardians of the Galaxy. I don't want to spoil anything, but let's just say that the very opening, I didn't expect it, and I loved it. The first moment where you see what Wakanda looks like from a broad spectrum, to even like having Chadwick Boseman talk about it, like, oh, what about this? Like, it never gets old seeing this, to you seeing the panned out view of it and the immersion and the excellence of how finely tuned like every single detail is. And I got to see it in IMAX, and it looks just as good in IMAX. It was very beautiful. Like, it's weird because when you look at Thor Ragnarok, you expect to see Asgard like being like this amazing, extravagant place, and it's like, to be honest, like, Wakanda excels in that. Because what they do is they definitely show you the agriculture, the structure, but then they also show you them as a people. They show you like how they dress, how they are. Like, well, the first time I watched it, I didn't really notice what they dress like. It's like the kids and the teenagers and the adults, they very much so dress what will look like, you know, somebody from South Africa, what they would dress, but then tailored to this modern day look. And then with these technology, like, the technology is the thing that makes this very much so key. They got the beads that are shown, and if you looked at or read any of the Black Panther comics, you would know about the beads and how there's a holographic projection that comes from it, as well as like how the weapons and the armor, like, it's just all amazing looking. It's its own world in and of itself, and it's fascinating to me that the outside world has no idea, any kind of condition of what Wakanda really is. And that plays into the story arc, which I'll get into that a little bit later on. But in terms of how they actually use technology and how they actually showcase it in this film, Ryan Coogler was able to identify that and like pinpoint it perfectly, in my personal opinion. And then that brings you to Shuri, who's played by Lupita, right? She plays Chadwick Boseman's T'Challa's younger sister, but she's the technological genius. It's very much so implored that she's on a genius level higher than Tony Stark. She's younger than Tony Stark, and then at the same exact time, what she's been able to actually build, what she's able to actually do. A lot of people would think of this movie at certain times kind of like a James Bond film, because she's very much so the Q of James Bond, and she is hilarious. She's very much so ambitious. If you know anything about her in the comics, like, she's also got some really interesting ties to the lineage side of the Black Panther. So I'm curious to see what they're going to do with that moving forward. But Lupita Wright did a great job with that, and how they used her to front run all the different technologies was very good. Martin Freeman played an interesting part at one point where you know, something happens and she's like, you need to go and do this. Like, you're more than capable pilot to do this. And it's just like, it was just so cool how they intersect that. The other thing about Martin Freeman in this film, I thought he did a really good job. Like, it's funny to me because Martin Freeman, all I really know him from, for me personally, is the Sherlock series. I love him in Sherlock. He's been in a lot of other things. But Sherlock is the role that for me defined him. Yes, I know he was Bilbo Baggins. I know that. But I loved him in Sherlock. And it's like in this one, like, when I went to see Civil War, like, I really wasn't invested in his character. I didn't care about him at all. But in this movie, like, I was like, I really like his character. Another connection with that will be Andy Serkis. Andy Serkis is a great villain. He is a great character in this film. Like, I can't stress that enough because he's got this personality that just pops out, but he is such an expressive actor that, like, when he is on the screen, like, you can't look away. And, like, some of the things that they were able to do technologically with his arm, because you know from Age of Ultron he got his arm cut off, I think they did a really good job with all of that. But I just really loved him. Like, I was like, yo, Andy, you need to be in more live action things because you're such a talented actor. And it's like, it never gets looked at, you know, by the Academy for all the CG work he does. But even when he's a regular, like, just character, like, he's just so expressive and so dynamic, and I really loved him. But one of the biggest praises that came behind this film that I heard was about Michael B. Jordan. I'm going to say this before I get into Michael B. Every single character organically and fluidly gets their opportunity to shine in this film. Like, every single one of them. Every single one of them have, like, this random moment. And I thought that that was so fascinating because in a 2-hour, 15-minute movie, sometimes that can be very hard because you want to play to your strengths, but then you also want to trust your cast. And I can tell that Ryan Coogler very much so with the scripting and with the FaceTime trusted every single person he picked. And that's the same thing that can be said about Creed 2. Like, that was the same exact thing that really kind of was dynamically actually happening. And then there was some surprises that I can't talk about. Like, Sterling K. Brown was in this movie. I didn't even know. And, like, the way they would have utilized him, I was like, this is great. I can't wait to talk about a little bit more of this in the spoiler review, but I'm trying to fly through this as best I can. But back to Michael B. Jordan. Michael B. Jordan have been in, been in The Wire, been in a few recent movies that have been hit or miss here or there. Fantastic Four, but then Chronicle was really good. Creed was really great. He's going to be in Creed 2 very soon. But this is the first time he's ever played a villain. And for me, seeing what he's done to this point, I think that he is one of those villains that has purpose and at the same exact time platform. What I mean by platform is the writer, director, whoever else involved gave him an opportunity to organically just flow through his own storyline. Like, you get like, oh man, this is why he's doing this. This is why he's doing this. The other thing about it though is that Killmonger, or Eric, kills a lot of people in this film. And like, he unapologetically does it. And it's like, every single time he does it, like, you're like, I get why he did that. Like, it's messed up, but I get why he did that. And it's hard to say any more than that. Maybe a small critique would be like, there were 2 different instances where he killed 2 people, and after the fact there was a voiceover, he said something and it's kind of like left out of translation, where I was like, you know, once he did it, like, he didn't have to say anything. I kind of think that that's more of a nitpick more than anything. But I want to also give you guys any kind of negatives that I also saw. The first 2 acts of this film, I thought positionally were perfect. I thought that they were perfect. The third act feels like a blueprinted, how do I put this? Intersection of what a Marvel film would go into a regular film. And a regular film is, this is not a regular film. This is very much so telling a message, telling a story, telling a coming of age and pride oriented, self-preservation oriented film. In that, you know, it's not just about a people, but it's about so much bigger than that. Like, there's some of the messages that are actually in it. But the third act, it kind of ties up a certain kind of way, which I like the way it tied up, but it kind of felt more like a Marvel-centric way of kind of tying it up, where certain things that, or certain people that I thought were going to go, or certain things I thought were going to go, or that did go, I was like, man, y'all could have took a whole different gamble with this. But, you know, for what it was, you know, it was fine. But I have to tell, you know, any kind of critiques that I actually saw, because I was like, man, you could have finished this, probably making this one of the best, period. You know, but it still is at my number 3. But Michael B. Jordan was great. Like, I loved Eric. I loved what they positioned him to do. But then the other thing about this is you got the other side of that is T'Challa. And Chadwick has already won me over. I could go look at Civil War right now, and I would look at Civil for 2 different reasons most of the time. Spider-Man and Chadwick Boseman's Black Panther. And the suit was perfect to me. I think that when you see the movie, you'll see why the suit was changed aesthetically and functionally. But it's like, it's weird because the first suit looks real, but the new suit looks CG. And I think that it's, the bigger the screen, you're gonna notice a little bit more, or maybe less, I'm not sure. But I really was a stickler for the old one. I wish you would have kept it because it seemed so much more real. But that aside, Chadwick Boseman does great. Like, he does great. In the moments that he needs to feel vulnerable or feel like the king or feel like in desperation, he can act anyway. But like, Ryan allows him to really act. Ryan allows him to have those moments. So there's one moment where he's like, I am the king now. Tell me, you know, kind of thing. And I was like, all right, there you go, Chadwick. But every king is only as good as the people that are around him. And this cast is crazy. I mean, you got, I'm going to try to go down the line here. You got Lupita Nyong'o. You got Denai. You got Daniel Kaluuya. You got Winston Duke. You got Angela Bassett, Forrest Whitaker. I mean, you got an all-star cast, and like, all of them are great. But the funny thing is that the 2 women in his life, the woman that's his general and the woman that is spy, as it were, for Wakanda, and Lupita and Denai, they are great. And the thing about it is that anybody that is looking forward to like more women of power and of grace, but at the same time heart and devotion to protect as a superhero or anything else more than that, these 2 characters exhibit that differently but perfectly. And it's like, it's a credit to Denai because, man, Denai has some crazy action scenes. Like, her action scenes were on point. But then Lupita, like, she has this elegance about her, this beauty about her, but then she's very much so like on it whenever she needs to be. And it's funny because you can tell the same exact thing in the nature with Shuri as well. Like, if Shuri needs to, she'll take that genius thing, put it to the side, and like go to work. Same thing for Angela Bassett. She was on the top of it. Every time that she was on screen, she felt like the real queen. And even with Forrest Whitaker, they all had their accents down. All of them had their accents on point. Even Sterling K. Brown, in the way they utilize him. Winston Duke, that plays Baku, he was hilarious. He was actually really good as well. And so I just want to make sure I give everybody ample time to tell you guys like what I thought about everybody's performance. Because I feel like if the performances didn't matter, if they weren't driven the right kind of way, it'd have been just like this cookie cutter kind of thing. Whereas like, you think about Ant-Man, like you think about Ant-Man and his best friends. Like you think about Ant-Man and this other person. So it's like, they definitely play to the strengths of the actors around them, and it very much so was very well done. The other thing about this movie that I'm not going to tell you anything about the story, because the story is immersed in a lot of different political secrets. Political and heart secrets. Secrets that affect T'Challa, that affect Wakanda, and at the same time, it could lead to his detriment in the long term, depending on the way that T'Challa interacts with them. Whereas his dad, T'Chaka, he left a great dynasty, but it's like, kind of like, think about the Lion King in the sense that even though Simba inherited, you know, the Pride Land, like he still had to overcome all the hurdles that befall him from letting like people like Scar and other people kind of be in the backfold. And I think one of the things that's interesting is the council. Every time you see a council meeting, you're gonna feel that tension build. And I think that Michael B. Jordan and Chadwick actually really were able to get that involved a certain kind of way. Daniel Kaluuya actually has a lot more involvement in this as well. I can't tell you anything about his story arc, but he has a very interesting way they were able to interweave him within Chadwick Boseman's T'Challa's life. You'll get the connection when you see it, but it's actually very well fleshed out. But as far as the story is concerned, again, I'll say it without spoiling anything. The first 2 acts I think were very great, and I think that the last fight scene was choreographed pretty good, but it suffers from, I guess, a lot of splurge CG. But it doesn't take away from the fact that this is all pretty amazing because it's all for a purpose. I think it's like, if it was like a fight for no good reason, then it'd be like, dang. But when you're sitting there watching the fight happen, you're like, oh my gosh, this needs to be resolved immediately because this cannot happen. You know, and I thought that feeling of dread and anxiety, it was there. I wanted to stay in that a little bit longer, or kind of like take that one act, and I think it would have pushed the limitations that this movie might have had over it. But I think very much so, this is very much so a Ryan Coogler directed film as much as a written film, but it definitely merged in a lot of the Marvel blueprint aesthetic, which is not necessarily a negative thing. Definitely had one of the best villains in the MCU in Killmonger, which is Michael B. Jordan's character. And then all around, this is one of the most entertaining Marvel films to date, and my 3rd favorite MCU film, period. So I'm not going to reveal anything to you guys about the actual story. I just tell you that it was very good. It's very well fleshed out. It's definitely got rewatchability appeal. I didn't think, when I watched it the first time, I was like, you know, that was just on that high. I just enjoy it. But the second time I watched it, I was like, man, I really like this film. Man, I can't wait to take my wife to see this film. Man, I can't wait to take other people to see this film. And like, just gush over the things that happen. Like, one thing I didn't tell you guys is anything about the action moments, because every single action moment, you gotta see it on your own, because there's some action moments in this. It does you a disservice to look at any of the TV spots or the trailers, because some of these action moments are just dope. And it might be like a hand-to-hand fight kind of action moment. It might be like a chase scene. Like, there was one chase scene that I was like, yo, this is crazy. And so, only thing that I would have asked for is maybe one more fight towards the end. I'll go into it in my spoiler review. But again, my negatives really were just kind of like, I think that they could have broke outside the mode of like some of the blueprint of what an MCU film could or should be based on, you know, the consumer process. I think that some of the CG at times was a little bit, you know, taking me out of it just based on the suit aesthetic towards the 3rd act as well. Some of the choices that were made as far as what characters were going to do this or do that. The marketing, I think, was another thing. With the Infinity War trailer, you know who will make it and who won't. And I think that kind of took me out of it, because I was like, you know, I wanted to feel like this person could go. Now I know it can't, you know. Oh, and there are 2 end-credit scenes. You gotta check them out. There are 2 end-credit scenes. You gotta go and make sure you check out both of them. But they definitely took a lot of bold risks with this one as well. It's from the political side, from some of the things that happens. It can get really dark at times, and they don't like just nonchalantly laugh it off. Like, it's something that you kind of have to overcome. The best kind of comparison I can give you is War for the Planet of the Apes. Was it whatever the Planet of the Apes, which is the second one? It kind of felt like that. There was a moment that felt like the theme of what happened in the second Planet of the Apes movie. But either way, I give this movie a 9 to a 9.5 out of 10. I'm gonna rest it at a 9.3 out of 10. It's definitely one of my favorite MCU films. That score may go up. I'll talk to you guys a little bit later on about that in my spoiler review. I'm gonna have a discussion sometime next week. And again, hopefully y'all enjoyed this. Please definitely leave a like if you enjoyed this review. I know I went into grave detail I tried to make sure I changed up the way that I did the review process for this one to give you guys my best. That's one thing I'll say about Ryan Coogler. He implores and inspires me to do my best. And it's not just because we're close to the same age, it's the fact that like when you see his films like pop out, like you can tell the expression behind it. I think that's the biggest thing. I can connect with the expression and it makes me want to push myself even further. And as far as a filmmaker standpoint and as far as an actor standpoint or just an artist standpoint, this movie very much so will make you feel empowered. Regardless if you are African American or a minority, just in general, like you will feel uplifted in a lot of the cultural representation in this film. It is grounded perfectly. The other thing is with the music. Ludwig does a great job with the score for this film, and him and Kendrick Lamar merged something that I thought organically worked as well, because when there was the Kendrick Lamar soundtrack playing, it wasn't just spread throughout the whole entire time. It very much so was used on the tribal culture aesthetic as far as the score, and I would buy the score and the soundtrack personally. So I think that Ludwig did a great job with the score. It functioned great. It might be one of the best MCU scores. And so because of all that, again, I rest this at a 9.3. I might go to a 9.5 honestly, you guys. But hope you all enjoy this review. Keep it locked. JVS, we ain't gonna stop. Y'all have a blessed night. Peace, guys. Oh, make sure you subscribe and click the little bell at the bottom. Peace.